A network fired a man while he was fighting cancer, replaced him without warning, and told fans to just accept it. Then something happened that almost never happens in television. The network admitted it was wrong, and the man they pushed out is walking straight back into the role that defined his career. This is the full story of how Hudson and Rex Season 9 came together, why Charlie Hudson is finally coming home, and what his return is about to do to a police department, a dog, and a show that spent an entire season pretending he never existed. Before we get into what Season 9 actually looks like, you need to understand why this comeback means so much to the people who have watched this show from the very beginning. Hudson and Rex was never built to be flashy. It was built on one simple relationship, a detective named Charlie Hudson and a German shepherd named Rex, working cases together on the streets of St. John's, Newfoundland. John Reardon played Charlie for 7 straight seasons, and in that time, the show quietly became one of the most watched procedurals in the world, selling to more than 100 territories, from the United States to Italy to Germany and beyond. People did not tune in every week for the crime of the week. They tuned in because the bond between this man and his dog felt real. It felt lived in. It felt like something worth protecting. Then, partway through Season 7, something changed, and fans could feel it even if they did not know exactly what it was. Charlie started disappearing from episodes. He was mostly reduced to phone calls, supposedly from somewhere in South America, while the show tried to write around his absence without really explaining it. What audiences did not know at the time was that behind the cameras, John Reardon was quietly fighting tonsil cancer. He stepped away from filming to focus entirely on treatment, and instead of turning that into a headline or a sympathy story, he kept it private. He let the show keep running without drawing attention to what he was actually going through, because he was thinking about his health first and about protecting a series he had spent 7 years helping to build. When he came out the other side with a clean bill of health, this should have been the kind of story networks love to tell. An actor beats cancer and returns to the role that made him a household name. Instead, when Season 8 premiered, Charlie was simply gone. There was no farewell scene, no moment of Rex waiting by the door for a partner who was not coming back. No acknowledgement at all. In his place was a brand new detective named Mark Hudson, played by British actor Luke Roberts, and the show moved forward as though the last 7 years had not been built around Charlie and Rex at all. Here is what turned quiet disappointment into real anger. This was never Reardon's choice. In September of 2025, he said so directly on his own social media, writing that after finishing treatment, he was cleared and ready to return to work. But the production team decided to go in a different direction without him. Think about the timeline here. A man gets sick, hides it out of respect for the people relying on him, fights through treatment, comes out healthy, and shows up ready to go back to work, only to be told the show has already moved on without him. For a cast member who had helped shape the series from the inside, who had even worked behind the camera as an executive producer, that was not just a disappointing career update. It felt like a betrayal, and the audience picked up on that instantly, because long-running shows like this one are never just about plot. They are about relationships, and when Charlie vanished with zero closure, it did not feel like a storyline ending naturally. It felt like something real being erased on purpose. What makes this whole situation sting even more is the timing of it all. Reardon was not just an actor reading lines on set. He had spent 7 years shaping the tone and rhythm of a series that grew from a modest local production into a global export, sold across more than 100 countries, translated into different languages, and embraced by audiences who had never even been to Newfoundland, but somehow felt like they knew every street corner of St. John's through Charlie's eyes. He had a hand in shaping the character behind the scenes, working as an executive producer alongside the rest of the creative team, which means his connection to this show went far beyond just showing up to film his scenes. So when the decision came down to replace him while he was mid-recovery, it did not read to fans as a simple creative refresh. It read as a business decision made about a man's career while he was still dealing with the aftermath of cancer treatment. And that combination is exactly the kind of thing that turns ordinary disappointment into real, sustained anger. Networks make cast changes all the time. Actors leave shows for all sorts of reasons, and audiences usually accept it, even if reluctantly, when there is a clear explanation and a respectful goodbye. What audiences generally do not accept is silence, and that is exactly what they got here. No explanation inside the story. No send-off scene. No acknowledgement that Charlie Hudson, the character who had defined this show for 7 years, was even gone. He just stopped existing in the narrative, replaced by someone new, as though the transition required no emotional weight at all. For a show built entirely on the emotional connection between one man and his dog, that silence was the loudest possible signal that something behind the scenes had gone very wrong. What happened next is the part of this story that most shows never have to deal with, because most audiences do not fight back this hard. The moment Season 8 premiered without Charlie, fans did not quietly grumble and move on the way networks usually expect. They organized. Social media accounts connected to the show were flooded with criticism almost immediately. Petitions started circulating, demanding that John Reardon be brought back into the role he had built from the ground up. Some fans went even further, pooling together to take out full-page newspaper ads, specifically calling for his reinstatement. That is not a normal reaction to a cast change. That is the kind of sustained pressure campaign you usually only see attached to something much bigger than a network procedural. And the anger was not just loud online. It showed up in the numbers, too. Longtime viewers who had followed the show since its very first season started tuning out, and for a series that depended on a loyal international audience across more than 100 territories. That kind of consistent drop-off is not something a network can simply wait out and hope it fixes itself. Under normal circumstances, this is exactly the moment where networks dig in. The standard playbook when a show makes an unpopular cast change is to defend the decision publicly, let the new direction run for a full season or two, and hope the backlash eventually fades. Reversing course in public usually looks like admitting a mistake, and most networks will absorb months of criticism before they will do that. But this time, the response came faster than anyone expected. In May of 2026, Citytv did something that almost never happens in this industry. It reversed the decision completely. John Reardon was officially confirmed as returning to Hudson and Rex for Season 9, stepping back into the role of Detective Charlie Hudson. This was not a vague tease or an unconfirmed rumor circulating online. It was a full announcement, backed by the network and by the show's production company, Shaftesbury. Christina Jennings, chairman and chief executive of Shaftesbury, said in a statement that Reardon is a talented actor and that the team was incredibly pleased to have him return as Detective Charlie Hudson, adding that they knew fans had missed him, and so had the people making the show. Reardon handled the announcement the same way he handled the entire situation, without drama, but with a real sense of excitement about stepping back into a partnership that clearly still meant something to him. He said he was looking forward to beginning production on the new season with the cast, crew, and creative team, and to bringing fans more adventures with Rex. Along with the announcement came a short clip that fans latched onto instantly. Reardon looking at Rex and simply asking if the dog missed him before saying it was time to get back to work. That short moment was enough to send the fan base into a frenzy of excitement. And for a show that had spent an entire season defending its new direction, that clip was about as close to an admission as viewers were ever going to get that they had been right to push back. It is worth sitting with just how rare this kind of reversal actually is in the television industry. Networks do not like admitting they got something wrong in public, because doing so can look like an admission of failure. And failure is expensive when you are dealing with international distribution deals, advertising partners, and a production schedule that was already locked in around the new cast. The easier path, the path almost every other show takes, is to simply ride it out. Let the noise die down. Let a new season or two pass. Hope the algorithm buries the criticism, and trust that enough time will soften even the angriest fans. That approach usually works, at least well enough that networks keep using it. What makes this case different is the scale and the persistence of the backlash. This was not a short-lived wave of angry comments that faded after a week. It was sustained pressure that stretched across an entire season, building through petitions, spilling into traditional media